Alright everybody, you know what time it is. It's time for another Strange and Dark Cases compilation. I'm not calling it Strange and Bizarre Cases anymore after realizing how redundant that was. Only took me a couple years. These are the cases I come across while researching other videos that aren't really long enough to be their own video but are definitely worth talking about. So with all that out of the way, let's get into it. I've kind of accepted with this one that I'm probably not gonna get monetized, so I hope you enjoy it.
So for a while now, I've been using a service called Factor to help out with my meal prepping, and it's really working out. Factor has a team of gourmet chefs that create each of their meals using only the best ingredients to keep you feeling your best all day. They help you with your nutritional goals by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your home. This fall, you might have a lot going on outside the kitchen. In that case, you might as well just keep on with your plans and try out Factor. They deliver fresh, nutritious, chef-prepared meals ready to eat in just 2 minutes. After working all day, you might as well use Factor to treat your body right. Their meals make it easy to get the nutrition you need with a restaurant-like experience. There's no prep, no mess, just good-tasting meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon delivered right to your door. For this video, I decided to try the roast chicken out. Just open the thing up, microwave for 2 minutes, and it's done. It tastes great too. I definitely can't recommend it more. Factor even offers Gourmet Plus meals as part of your weekly options. That way you can get a little gourmet action on the side with your meal plan. Get some premium produce with your protein like broccoli or broccolini. Surf and surf, shrimp and salmon, and surf and turf, steak and shrimp are coming soon too. Bottom line, Factor gives me a lot of options that make it easy to meet my goals. So head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code DIRETRIP50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code DIRETRIP50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders.
And here we have, Mom lets boyfriend drown her son in the toilet. One morning in December in Arkansas, a grandmother came for a court-appointed visit with her grandchildren. Once she arrived, her problem child daughter told her that her grandson wasn't home. This was pretty confusing given that the boy was only 5 years old and everyone else seemed to be home. Right after that, her granddaughter walked over to her with a pretty nasty scab across her forehead and seemed like she could barely even walk. The grandma then called the police as she rushed the girl to the hospital. Once she arrived at Forest City Hospital, the doctors were able to determine that she had been severely burned. Their burns were said to have come from their mother, Ashley's boyfriend, Nathan Bridges. Apparently, after the young girl had acted out, Nathan decided to hold her head and upper torso under scalding hot water in the bathtub, something he would apparently often do as punishment. Meanwhile, the police made their way out to Ashley Rollins' house and immediately inquired as to where her son, Blue, was. She responded by telling them that he was possibly dead and hidden somewhere in the house. Not cooperating any further, the police were forced to tear the place apart. Noticing some loose floorboards, they lifted them up and found something wrapped in layers and layers of plastic bags. On what would have been his 6th birthday, they found Blue's body right there. With no way out of this, Ashley told the police the truth. She said that Blue had angered her boyfriend, Nathan, back in September by biting his finger. In a rage, he took the boy and drowned him by shoving his head into the toilet. Ashley entered the bathroom to see her son limp and struggling to breathe, but she simply left the room and let it happen. She told the police that Nathan then buried the boy under the floorboards afterward. The state police soon made a statement saying, "Based on initial findings, it's believed that the boy died from injuries sustained in the home." Rolland reportedly told the police her son died 3 months earlier on September 9th, 2022. Another person interviewed by detectives, however, said Ashley told her that she did not know what to do and had buried Blue under the floorboards after he came out of the bathroom with his face/body swelling and foaming at the mouth before collapsing and dying. The state police added that both Ashley and Nathan were charged with capital murder, abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and endangering the welfare of a minor. A friend of the kid's grandmother set up a GoFundMe page for both the grandma and the daughter. On the page, she spoke of the daughter's condition after being seized from her mother, saying that her hair had been haphazardly chopped off, she had cracked ribs, many burns all over her body in various stages of healing, and was clearly malnourished on top of it all. Both Ashley and Nathan appeared in court for a hearing and were ordered to be held without bond. A couple saying that they were Nathan's parents have made a lot of noise, saying that Ashley is the problem and that their son is innocent. When it came time for sentencing, Ashley Rowland was given only a 40-year sentence for her part in the murder. Nathan Bridges pled guilty in July to first-degree murder and first-degree battery. He was sentenced to serve out 60 years in the Arkansas Department of Corrections. Now we've got repeat felon kills old woman to steal car he didn't keep. Out in Seattle, an 80-year-old woman named Ruth Dalton was known around the city as being a pretty beloved figure. She was a grandma who had a small business walking dogs while also volunteering part-time at a local vet clinic. However, her life would come to a grisly end one Tuesday morning. Shortly before 10 a.m. in the road near East Harrison Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Way East, Ruth was driving around in her car like any other day. With several dogs in her back seat, she was on her way to the park to give them all a good walk as usual. However, this was when someone ran up to her driver's side door and began a carjacking. This man threw Ruth out of the car onto the ground, where he then hopped into the vehicle himself and ran her over, dragging her for quite a ways before she ultimately passed away in the street. A whole bunch of people were actually nearby, seeing everything happen with their own eyes. They all tried to rush over to help her, but the whole thing really only lasted a few seconds. One bystander was able to use their baseball bat to try and swing it at the attacker, but they ended up missing and only hitting the car a couple of times. Everyone ran over to Ruth and tried to perform CPR on her, but by the time the ambulance finally arrived, she was pronounced dead at the scene. A few hours later, Animal Control was called out to Brighton Field, finding one of the dogs deceased in a trash can. This was Ruth's own dog, who likely lashed out at the criminal to defend her. Another dog was found, seemingly alive, about a mile away from where the carjacking took place. Not too far from the parked trash can, they found Ruth's car abandoned. Given that the side of the vehicle and the front and back windshields were all damaged, the culprit no longer even wanted it. He simply left it and wandered off. At first, the police didn't even get a good description of the criminal aside from the fact that he appeared to be an adult male. Needless to say, that didn't really narrow things down too much. Meanwhile, members of the public came out to express their grief. One of Ruth's friends said, "She is somebody that people really loved, and she's been a neighborhood fixture in the Madison Park neighborhood for a long time. She is going to be so missed, and people really loved her. How can you murder a beloved dog walker? I mean, what is wrong with you? Why do you do those things? An 80-year-old woman, with 6 dogs in the car. Really, how can you do that?" Ruth's cell phone was found abandoned near where the car was found, and luckily the police picked up some fingerprints on it that weren't hers. They ran these fingerprints through the database and found that it was a perfect match for someone on their record with a whopping 8 felonies under his belt. It was now fairly easy to track down their culprit, 48-year-old Ahmed K. Haynes. He had a long rap sheet going back to the early 90s. In fact, this wasn't even his first murder. In 1993, he killed a man with his car and was convicted of vehicular homicide. Somehow, he was let free pretty quickly and continued to rack up charges throughout the 90s, getting a stint in prison for a robbery he committed in 1999. In 2003, while locked up, he attacked 2 officers during a cell inspection and got into even more trouble given that he used a shank to do the job. He was charged with assault in the 2nd degree, but that later got reduced to charges of custodial assault escape. If only that charge hadn't been downgraded, it would have been his 3rd strike and he would have ended up in jail for good. He got out of prison in 2017. When arrested, he inexplicably still had Ruth's car keys on his person despite long abandoning the car. He was also carrying a knife, one that notably still had traces of blood and hair on it. He was charged with 1st-degree murder with a weapon enhancement, 2nd-degree assault with a deadly weapon enhancement, and 1st-degree animal cruelty with a deadly weapon. He was thrown into jail and requested an attorney. The prosecuting attorney in his case has said, "In short, the level of violence the defendant has shown he is capable of, not only within the day the presently charged crimes were committed, but over the course of the last 30 years, demonstrates a propensity for violence that conclusively shows that he is a danger to the community." Ahmed is now in jail, held without bond. It's very likely that he will never be free again. Ruth Dalton's family has told the media that they are going to organize a march to honor her and establish a donation account in her name. This one is titled, "Son Shot Father in the Face Over Argument About His Stinky Feet." While there's no doubt that this case is pretty short and to the point, it is definitely all parts strange and dark, so here we go. This story started when an old man, William Carpenter, was sitting around at home with his 48-year-old son, David. One Sunday night in Fort Madison, Iowa, William, smelling something pretty rank, deduced that it was probably his son's nasty-ass feet. When he told his son that his feet stank, he didn't take it too well at all. In fact, David made a comment about shooting him for what he just said. William, knowing that his son was a bit of a weirdo, didn't really think anything of the comment. However, David stood up and went into the other room. There, he retrieved his gun and brought it back to the living room. He walked over to where his elderly father was sitting in his motorized scooter, watching some TV, and began to yell at him. David then pulled the gun out from where he had been hiding it behind his back, pointed it right at his father's face, and pulled the trigger, something that he says was only an accident. After neighbors heard gunshots, the police were called out to the home. David Carpenter was swiftly arrested and charged with both attempted murder and child endangerment after admitting that he shot his father while his kid was in the room. In fact, 2 kids under the age of 14 were in the house at the time of the shooting, one of them being in the other room. David was thrown into Des Moines County Jail on a $100,000 cash-only bond. William, surprisingly, was alive and taken to the hospital. His injuries were deemed to be non-life-threatening. At the hospital, he told the police all about his argument with his son over his foot stench. David's hearing is all set to happen sometime pretty soon while the police continue to investigate the entire incident. And here's a doozy. Dentist flew 2,000 miles to have sex with mom and her 9-year-old daughter. Here's one that I'll really be surprised if I get away with talking about on YouTube, so I'm gonna have to soften up the wording just a little bit, but I'm gonna make sure you get the gist. Back in October, Homeland Security decided that they would take a page out of Chris Hansen's playbook and set up some actors to play decoy children online in order to catch some predators. One undercover agent played the part of a mother with an 8-year-old daughter. This actor then went into numerous chat groups for people who discussed their, let's say, enthusiasm for incest and child-related material. It was only a day or two before this actor came in contact with a man who later identified himself as Atha. The agent and the man both discussed intercourse with the mother persona and with the fake child. Atha was more than enthralled with these conversations, continuing the talks for nearly a year up until June 14th. He even suggested that this mother give her daughter erotic toys during playtime in order to get used to everything. Atha began to say, "I would love to find a mother and daughter to play with." This was when the agent suggested that Atha come out to Florida to meet with her and her daughter and, well, take the 2 of them at once. Dr. Jason James Atha, a 50-year-old dentist, was so into the idea that he flew about 2,000 miles out to Florida to get it done. He enthusiastically replied with, "I would so love to be a part of that," before hopping on a plane and heading out. He told the mother to have her daughter ready, wearing an outfit for him that was called inappropriate but was never specified. Shortly after arriving for the planned date in West Palm Beach, the police captured the dentist immediately. In his bags, he was found to have both child-related material and erotic toys. Things got even worse upon investigating the man. While he normally worked for Alpine Dentistry in Boulder, Colorado, they found that he would often travel to North Carolina to do pro bono dental work for both adults and children who couldn't afford dental care. Upon being apprehended by the police, Jason actually grew pretty angry and asked how he could possibly be being arrested and how his conversations with the mother could even be known to the feds. After a bit of pushing, he did admit that he had flown out to Florida in order to watch the mother and the girl together, but denied that he was actually going to do anything himself. The agents got a warrant to search his phone, and there they found out that not only was he a member of much more of these groups than they even knew about, but that he also had more child material on there as well. Jason Atha was charged with attempted enticement of a minor and actually faces a chance of life in prison if convicted, which seems like a sure thing given the evidence. However, Jason has hired himself 2 different expensive law firms in order to get him out of this. It seems that, for the time being, he is free until trial. This is a wild one. Man pulls gun after Burger King worker wouldn't take drugs for payment. Late one October, a man named Eugene Robertson was pulling up to a Burger King drive-thru near the Aurora Mall in Aurora, Colorado, all ready to get his hands on some food. However, there was a catch. He wanted to buy his meal with the good old bartering system. He wanted to hand the cashier some hard drugs as payment for his burger. When this was declined, he got more than a little bit angry. He pulled out a handgun and threatened to shoot the worker if he didn't take his payment. The worker was able to flee, which led to Eugene simply leaving the restaurant. This wouldn't be the only crime he would commit that night in the small Denver suburb, though. Eugene parked his car and went over to a 7-Eleven store across the street. A patron in the store noticed that Eugene was acting pretty weird, saying that he was talking about God and carrying a Bible with a vibrant purple cover. He then went up to the counter and once again pulled his semi-automatic handgun on this clerk for reasons unknown. He fired a few shots and luckily missed the clerk. The shopper who previously saw him ran out to his car to get his own gun. Eugene then noticed the surveillance system in the store. He shot out the monitor, not the camera, and ran away. Eugene then ran into the shopper who had gone outside to retrieve his gun. Eugene fired about 4 shots at the man, who returned fire with 2 of his own. They both missed each other with every single shot as witnesses watched the chaos unfold. In the fray, the shopper had dropped his phone, which Eugene then picked up, stole, and ran off into the night. Eugene ran over to the apartment complex of a woman he knew. Knowing that he was pretty nuts, the woman refused to open the door for him. This angered Eugene once again, and he fired 2 shots through the door. The multiple people in the home at the time were all left uninjured. Eugene then ran down the stairs to the first floor of the complex and fired another shot into the sliding glass door before leaving. Officers came out to the scene to search for Eugene. He hadn't gotten far, actually. In fact, he simply walked over to the side of the parking lot and jumped into the bushes to hide. The cops could see him and shouted out to him. When Eugene came out of the bushes, the cops shot at him, once again completely missing. They arrested him right there, realizing that he was the same man from Burger King and 7-Eleven that they were looking for. While they couldn't find his gun on him, they did find the stolen phone and a bunch of meth. When being arrested, Eugene told the cops that they had hurt his feelings. He also gave them a fake name, Jermaine Rosenberg, while handing them his ID that showed his real name. It also revealed that he lived in the apartment complex he shot up, just a few doors down, actually. The police also looked him up in the system and found that he had a felony warrant for a weapon possession charge. When the cops asked him what he did with his gun, Eugene said that he was shocked and had no idea what they were talking about. In April, Eugene finally went to trial. The jury found him guilty of 17 crimes, 8 of which were charges of attempted murder. There were also 4 counts of felony menacing, illegal discharge of a firearm, possession of a controlled substance, harassment, and 2 counts of reckless endangerment, and more. The sentences were all to run consecutively, making for quite the long prison term. While awaiting his sentence, he knew that he was facing up to 400 years in prison for his GTA-style spree that night. On August 9th, a county district judge sentenced the 40-year-old Robertson to 143 years in prison. Most of those years were for the attempted murders. A prosecutor said, "We consider this 143-year sentence justice for the multiple victims he put in fear that night. Jurors recognize the severity of the crimes this defendant committed. We believe the judge imposed an appropriate sentence. Even if he gets out on good behavior, half of a 143-year sentence comes out to be about 71 years. Could someone live to be 111? Potentially, but it's still a lengthy sentence and something we're satisfied with. Let's just be glad that this man's accuracy stat is a flat 0%. And, this one is, Russian tourist who tried to hump a cow is gored by the animal. Boy, here's another one where I'm going to have to be really careful with my wording for YouTube, and I'm sure you can assume why, given the subject matter. Well, this story took place when a 26-year-old Russian tourist out in Thailand named Yevgeny Kuvshinov was looking for some fun. Heading out to a random field in southern Thailand, he saw a full-size bull and got a really funny feeling in his pants. He immediately stripped off all of his clothing and made his way over to the animal before spotting a much more enticing cow, a female tied to a fence post. He tried to get down to business on this cow's backside, but the cow was not having it. The cow actually flipped around, threw Yevgeny to the ground, and shoved its horn up his butt before attacking him even further. Some locals, already seeing this naked Russian running around their fields, knew something was bound to happen and had already called the police. The police arrived, hearing his cries for help as the cow continued to beat him up. Photos were taken of Yevgeny lying on the ground, completely naked as the cow continued to pummel him, all while the police tried to get him free. They finally managed to get the cow to calm down and got the man onto a stretcher, on his stomach, for pretty obvious reasons. He had to be treated for his now gaping booty hole and various other cuts and bruises all over his body. The police said, "We found cannabis in his car, so maybe he was high? The way we found him, his actions suggest he was trying to do something dirty with the cow, that he was trying to have intercourse with her." The police said that, if they had not arrived, the cow most likely would have killed him. They said, "He kept walking and speaking Russian without any meaning. He had no smell of alcohol. In his car, there was marijuana and his passport torn apart. We sent him to the hospital because he was injured on his bottom, but he went crazy at the hospital and doctors would not admit him, so now he is detained at our police station. Now we are waiting for the tourist police and the immigration police to work on it, then we can conduct an investigation." And alright, while we're on that subject, let's look at... Woman who was filmed performing an erotic act with a trout faces court. This story is about a very strange middle-aged couple, Ashley David Hallam, 55, and his girlfriend Catherine June Lee, 58, out in New Zealand. Ashley was a regular fisherman, posting frequently about fishing trips and cooking on several local Facebook groups. In a lot of his photos, he's either holding a fish or offering advice on how to cook them. In one photo, he's seen holding a carp, saying, "Hi all, I just want to introduce myself and share a photo that I took. This guy ate a vibe, pulled like a train." However, these two avid fishers were no stranger to performing some pretty strange, frankly creepy erotic acts. They would record each other doing all sorts of taboo things, like having hardcore relations on top of a stranger's grave. Well, that brings us to this story. The couple were found with a video of them engaging in some of these creepy acts with a trout that they had just caught. Let's just say that Ashley was putting some trout lips to lips. This video somehow leaked online and made its way to the police. The police called the act nothing short of depraved. It wasn't too long before the couple were tracked down and arrested. The two were charged with 2 counts of making or reproducing a bestiality product and 3 counts of possessing a bestiality product. The police had to remind the public that it is indeed illegal to own this kind of material. Both of the couple have since gone to court but haven't entered any sort of plea yet. Catherine Lee has been trying to get an adjournment without entering a plea, actually. This was granted until October. Meanwhile, the couple were also charged over a second video that was found during a search, that of the two engaging in some fun on top of the grave of the famous painter David Hammond Chapman at St. Mark's Anglican Cemetery. At the end of the video, Catherine even mocked the dead in the cemetery after finishing, saying, "To the souls of the faithfully departed, may they rest in peace." To make things even worse, it turns out that Catherine worked at Kingston Animal Hospital. Well, workers at the hospital were very quick to denounce her and fire her. They addressed the whole incident in a statement, saying, "Dear valued clients, pets, and supporters of Kingston Animal Hospital, it has come to my recent attention that an ex-employee of the hospital has recently been the subject of attention by appearing in a video that has been widely circulated on social media. Please understand that this person is no longer a paid employee, has not worked at Kingston Animal Hospital for over 5 years, and over 10 years ago as a full-time employee." And now, while we're on the subject of New Zealand, New Zealand charity unknowingly distributes meth-laced sweets. This strange story started when a charity organization, Auckland City Mission, said that several of their staff members had taken a bite or two of some candy that had been donated, and they all started feeling pretty weird, noting that the candy tasted funny. The chief executive of the charity, Helen Robinson, then took some of the other candies and sent them to the New Zealand Drug Foundation for some testing. This showed that there was so much meth in the candy that it was potentially lethal in some of the pieces with a particularly high concentration. In fact, in one small piece of the candy alone, they found 3 grams. One lollipop contained about 300 average doses of meth in one. The police immediately came out to warn anyone about eating any Rinda's yellow pineapple flavor candy for the time being. They said that this matter was deeply concerning and that they would be cooperating with Interpol on the case, something that could end up taking quite a while. In fact, they still aren't even quite too sure of the spread. They found about 16 packets of the candy so far, with each packet containing about 20 to 30 various pieces of candy, saying that about 400 different people who might have taken the packs have been contacted by the charity and the police so far. All they really know is that the candy was probably donated in mid-July, but they still aren't even too sure where they came from. They were all donated anonymously in sealed retail packages, making them very hard to track. So far, at least 3 people, including one kid, ended up in the hospital after ingesting the candy. Luckily, they're all fine now. What makes this all even more confusing is how expensive this really would have been to pull all this off. With the amount of drugs that they had put into the candy, each single piece of candy could have been about $600 on the US market. Well, street value anyway. Whoever did this must have been pretty motivated, because a rough estimate of all the candies put together comes out to about $240,000 US dollars. And now we've got Illinois school worker gets 9 years for $1.5 million chicken wing heist. Now here's one that you might have seen in the memes pretty recently. I personally didn't believe it was real myself until looking into it because it's just so damn dumb. But here we are. This is the story of a woman named Vera Liddell, a 66-year-old lady who had been working for the Harvey School District 152 out in Illinois for more than 10 years. Vera used her position to carry out an impressively large-scale crime that still wouldn't come to light for quite some time. The school district consists of 6 schools where 80% of the students are described as being below the poverty line. Back when Corona started, the school started implementing distance learning, letting the kids study from home. However, given how much of them depended on the school lunch, they were still allowed to come and pick up a packaged meal every day. This is where Vera, in charge of placing orders with their food supplier, came in. From July 2020 to February 2022, she placed orders for chicken wings for all the students alongside the food they would get normally. But here's the thing. The school district actually had a rule against serving anything with bones still inside to the kids, so this wasn't something they could have even ordered in the first place. Well, those chicken wings weren't going to the kids anyway. Vera would go out and pick up the oodles of chicken in an actual cargo van, never actually delivering a bite of it to the kids as she continued to bill the school for the food only to ultimately keep it for herself. She got away with it too, until the school district realized during an audit that they had gone over $300,000 over budget. Looking into how they managed to overspend this much, the district found invoices for tons and tons of chicken wings. The trail ultimately led back to Vera. She was their meal manager after all. She was arrested and charged with both theft and running a criminal enterprise in January of 2023. And just recently, she finally got her sentence after pleading guilty, 9 years in prison. In total, Vera had stolen 11,000 boxes of chicken wings, worth about $1.5 million in total. The strange thing is, nobody really knows what happened to the wings, as they were never found. It seems pretty unlikely that she actually ate all of that herself, given that she isn't as big as a house, and it also seems pretty unlikely that she would find a buyer for that much chicken. Maybe this woman is just simply the Walter White of chicken wings. And hey, not to be content with only talking about one thing shoved up a butt today, man with World War I explosive lodged in his butt sparks bomb scare. A hospital in France faced quite an incident when an 88-year-old military veteran rolled up to their doors saying that something was wrong with his ass. Boy oh boy, he was not lying, as the doctors soon came to see for themselves. After performing an X-ray, they found an entire artillery shell shoved up in there. They didn't even know if this thing was still live, causing them to call the police, who in turn brought the bomb squad out. A spokesman for the hospital said, "An emergency occurred from 9 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. on Saturday evening that required the intervention of bomb disposal personnel, the evacuation of adult and pediatric emergencies, as well as the diversion of incoming emergencies. We had to manage the risk in a reactive framework. When in doubt, we took all the precautions." When the bomb squad arrived on scene, they found out that, luckily, the chances of the shell exploding upon being removed were actually pretty low. They said that the shell was a collector's item from the French military in World War I and was pretty likely no longer live. So, the fearful doctors began the process of excavating the man's booty hole in order to dig out their boom boom. The thing was about 8 inches long and roughly 3 inches wide, making for quite the, spread. It was determined that he stuck it up in there simply for the pleasure of it. The doctors who removed the item said, "An apple, a mango, or even a can of shaving foam, we are used to finding unusual objects inserted where they shouldn't be, but a shell? Never." The man, having to be cut open to even remove the giant object, was left in the hospital to recover. Luckily, he was described as being in good health, and it has since been said that he made a full recovery. And now, nurse claims hospital hypnotized her into farting uncontrollably. And here we have one of those beloved, not really a crime but a lawsuit type stories that a lot of you out there and me really have come to enjoy. Well, this one takes us out to West London, where another woman was also having trouble with her butt. A woman named Zandra Sampson was fired from her job at Ealing Hospital, so she decided to sue for a wrongful dismissal. Her claims were nothing short of bizarre, saying in the lawsuit that she was possessed, her private parts were being attacked, and that she was being gaslighted by low-frequency sound waves. It is unclear if she actually knows what gaslighting is. In the statement, she wrote, "I would like to report an observed pattern of likely inappropriate use of hypnosis/idiometer phenomenon in my National Health Service workplace." She spoke of idiometer phenomenon, which is the technical term for when people move objects subconsciously, like on a Ouija board. She added that, because of this, she had been hypnotized into farting, saying, "In the last 3 months that I have worked in the department, I have experienced odd symptoms which I think is likely related to the above phenomenon. I am a healthy individual and does not have any past medical history, but recently I have had various symptoms including headaches, breathing difficulty, a feeling of getting choked, and gastrointestinal disturbance, borborygmus, spasms, flatulence." This also includes having slurs similar to that of being possessed, as in a paranormal phenomenon. I have also noticed this in some of my patients and colleagues at work. It becomes extremely bothersome and a distraction at work. It also involves a feeling of being attacked in various parts of the body, including that of one's private part, which I feel is very inappropriate. I had to look up what borborygmus, apparently you pronounce it, is, and it's a rumbling noise made by gas in the intestine. She then claimed that the building's heating and ventilation systems left her in an altered state of consciousness. Then she claimed that the hospital was gang-stalking her, adding, "Recently I have seen a van in the parking lot near the area where I work that carries what appears to be audio equipment. This also extends when I am at home. I have had sleep disturbances in the last few months, having waking episodes due to the above symptoms." She added that anytime she brought these problems up to her supervisors, they said that there was nothing they could do, likely very confused. She said, "I am concerned this is an act of serial bullying and stalking with harassment, and my lack of consent to be made a subject of this practice is a form of assault." The head of nursing at her hospital said this of her claims. The letter was very disturbing because of the way Miss Sampson explained the experiences she was having. It was very difficult to understand what she was saying at some points, and she was expressing some very unusual beliefs within the correspondence, including that she was being subjected to idiometer phenomenon in the AMU. From the letter, it was clear to me that something was not quite right, and I had concerns that Miss Sampson might have been suffering with her psychological and/or physical health. Given that she was a nurse responsible for the care of the critically ill and vulnerable patients in the AMU, there was a risk that if she was not well and was still working clinically, harm could come to the patients on the AMU, or that Miss Sampson's own health could negatively be impacted. While Miss Sampson had indicated that these were legitimate patient safety concerns, my preliminary view was that these events she was discussing were symptoms of ill health. This was because of her comments about hypnosis, and that there was a sense of paranoia throughout the correspondence, and suggestions of hallucinations. Unfortunately for Zandra, she lost her tribunal against the hospital after describing her symptoms. Instead, she was told to get some help. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found the topic interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and subscribe if you want to see more like this. I make a video like this once a month. I've also started up a podcast with 4 of my friends called the NBR Podcast. If you find this channel interesting, you might like that one too. I've also opened up a merch store. There you can get yourself some cool Dire Trip t-shirts, link in the description below. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media, see what I'm up to, and follow me on Patreon if you like. I really appreciate that. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. YouTube memberships are up too, and you get the same benefits there as well. This has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.